Okay, so we've let our oven preheat, and our biscuits are in the oven. They're close to being ready to come out. In the meantime, I want to clean up my work surface. So here we see we've got some extra dough left on the table. We use our pastry knife, or some people call it a bench scraper, and we scrape away all as much dough as we can clean up, because we want to clean up dry as much as possible, because that flour will turn to paste once it gets wet. So we want to do as much cleaning as possible while it's dry. Okay, the recipe says cook at 450 degrees for 12 to 15 minutes. So as soon as I stuck the biscuits in the oven, immediately I set the timer to the smallest number, which is 12 minutes. We don't set the timer to a number in between. We always set it to the smallest number, because at 12 minutes, if the biscuits aren't done, it's very simple to add more time. But if we set our timer to a higher number, like 14 or 15, and our biscuits are burnt, it's very difficult to deal with. We can't unburn them. The most we can do is scrape off the burnt part, and that's not what we really want to do. So immediately after sticking your biscuits in the oven, set your timer on the oven to the smallest number. Don't use your phone. Phones are unsanitary. All right, let's start with our gravy. We are going to use a half a cup of butter, which again, we're going to use margarine instead of butter. A half a cup is 1 full stick. And we're going to use 4 tablespoons of flour, all-purpose flour. We're not going to use whole wheat. Now, maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but four tablespoons of flour should be the same as 1/4 cup of flour. So let's test that out and see if it is in fact going to be close. And it's pretty darn close. Obviously not exact, but either the measuring cup or the measuring spoon are not perfect. Anyway, so there's my 4 tablespoons of flour. Now, if you remember, when we talked before, a roux is a thickening agent made with equal parts fat and flour. But this particular roux is going to be a little bit different because it's a chocolate roux. So we have a half a cup of fat, but only a 1/4 cup of flour. We're going to supplement that with a 1/4 cup of cocoa. So this works just like flour in this case. It's our thickening agent, and I'm also going to show you how to use this nifty little tool here to measure. First of all, make sure there's not a bunch of flour on your measuring spoon, because we don't want to cross-contaminate. I made a faux pas there, and I didn't clean off my spoon first, but I would like you to clean off your spoon first. This is especially important when we're working in the classroom with other students. So scoop, and then use this straight edge to scrape off the top. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a 1/4 cup of cocoa, 1/4 cup of flour, which together equal a half a cup, which is equal to the half a cup of margarine that's in there. And we're going to cook that and make a roux. My timer's gone off. I think your recipe says make a roux over medium heat, so I'm going to go to medium heat. Let's check our biscuits, shall we? Golden brown. A little bit of crispy on the bottom. Not too much. That one's a little dark, but look how small it is, and it's on the outside. These bigger ones are just about perfect. We'll take those out and let them cool. While we're making our gravy. You can use your rubber spatulas to stir up your roux, because all of the rubber spatulas in the classroom are heat resistant, just like I know this one's heat resistant. Now, what you have at home may not be heat resistant, but you need to know before you start cooking with it. This rubber spatula that I have here in my home kitchen is not heat resistant. It's just a dollar rubber spatula, and it's not to be used for cooking, but it can be used for scraping out of containers. This one right here, I know, is made of silicone and is heat resistant. So I'm going to let my roux melt a little bit. Come on over here and we'll measure out our milk and sugar in the meantime. Okay, we're going to do 2 cups of milk. Notice I'm using a bigger measuring cup than I used for the buttermilk. It's because we need to measure 2 cups. So I'm going to fill this up to the line with milk. Disregard that loud noise. Notice how I measure on the table instead of holding it up in the air. It makes for a more accurate measuring. So there's my 2 cups. Oops, a little short still. There's my 2 cups of milk. And I also need 3/4 cup of sugar. Here is my sugar. And here is my 1/4 cup. Let's check our gravy. I'm sorry, our roux. See how it's going. Let's go back to the measuring of the sugar. Now, the recipe says we're going to add our sugar and our milk together. So what I'm going to do to save time and equipment is, first I'm going to dump some sugar on the table just because I'm messy. I want to wipe the cocoa out of my 1/4 cup measuring cup. So I don't want to get cocoa because I don't want to get cocoa in my sugar. Now sugar is a little bit more forgiving when it comes to measuring, so I don't need to dump it and scrape it. But there's 1/4 cup, 2/4 cups, and 3/4 cups, and I can set that aside. Let's go check our roux again. Okay, I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit, get it all melty. Now, just like when we made our bechamel with our our potatoes with cheese sauce, after it all melts, we're going to let it sizzle for a minute or 2 so we don't have a pasty taste. So I've turned down my heat for that, get it all mixed together good. So I'm going to let that sizzle. Spread it all out nice. Let that sizzle for a minute or 2 so it has some flavor. And it's okay to stir it. You don't want it to burn. Now, this is our roux. It's a chocolate roux, but it's a roux nonetheless. Equal parts fat and flour. But instead of using wheat flour, half of the flour is, you could say, chocolate flour. Now to that, I'm going to add my milk and sugar. And as you might have guessed, some of the sugar settled in the bottom. So I'm using my rubber spatula to scrape out all the stuff out of the measuring cup. Measuring cup has got to be cleaned at the end of our cooking assignment, so don't be afraid to push hard and get every last bit of stuff out of the measuring cup. You got to clean it anyway, so you might as well clean it when you can use it. I'm going to set these aside and use my whisk. Whisks are nice to use when making gravy of any kind because it helps break up the lumps. Now, if you remember when we made our bechamel, we realized that it's not going to thicken until it comes to a boil. So the cold milk has got to heat up and then come to a boil. And I want to keep stirring the whole time because I don't want it to melt. I don't want it to burn. So at first, because there's margarine in there, when I put the cold milk in, it looks like this. Kind of lumpy, but that's okay. As the milk heats up, it's going to melt the butter, or the margarine in this case, and then it will start to thicken. I know a lot of you are thinking, I ain't never heard of chocolate gravy before. And that's true. Before I heard of chocolate gravy, I never heard of it either. But since we are here in school, we're here to learn something new. This is a southern dish from the southern United States. And the reason we're making it is because we're learning again about a bechamel and a roux. And it's a lot easier and quicker than making a sausage gravy or a country gravy. So that's why we're making chocolate gravy instead of a country gravy. I'm going to get a plate ready so we can serve this as soon as it comes out. I've put a couple biscuits on a plate, ready for the gravy. As you can see, the gravy is starting to look a little like chocolate milk, and in a lot of respects it's very similar to chocolate milk, but it's going to be a very thick chocolate milk when it's done. I've had students make this and forget to put sugar in, and boy are they disappointed. Cocoa is very bitter without the sugar. But it's starting to heat up and melt those lumps away nicely. I'm going to give it a little bit more heat just to expedite the process. And again, we're waiting for it to come to a boil. Looks coming along nicely. Still got some lumps in there, but that should go away when it comes to a boil. And if it doesn't, oh well. It'll still be good. On a country gravy, instead of using chocolate, we would have sausage and bacon, lots of pepper and salt, and it would be made not with margarine, but it would be made with bacon grease as the fat in the roux. I wouldn't use bacon grease for chocolate gravy though. Too many flavors competing. Starting to thicken up just a little bit, but not much. It really has to come to a boil for full thickening to take place. A little more heat. Now we talk in the classroom sometimes about burner size. You'll notice here on my home stovetop, I got different size burners. This is the largest one. That's good for boiling water. We have a smaller one back here, a medium-sized one, and the one I'm using right now is a medium-sized one. Over here on the right, I have a little tiny burner, and that's for things that simmer for long periods of time. You don't want them to get that hot, so you use a smaller burner. And again, the big burner is for things like boiling water or great big skillets or great big griddles. So I'm using the middle one. And it's taking its sweet time coming to a boil. But the lumps are going away, that's good. Looks like hot chocolate. And it's going to taste like hot chocolate, except kind of thick. You have to be patient because it takes a while for cold milk to come to a boil. You can't hurry something like this up. You can turn up the heat a little bit, but if you turn it up too much, it'll burn. And all my lumps are going away. I can feel it starting to thicken. It's getting close to boiling.